I want to start the show off by speaking about a topic that is in the news now, and I meant to talk about it yesterday, but I completely ran out of time, and that is what's going on over the case of the shooting death of Trayvon Martin and the person who shot him, George Zimmerman. And what's going on? It's like a media firestorm. In fact, Trayvon Martin's parents are going to be on Capitol Hill today testifying. What a circus this is going to be. But this is really an example of the worst of American politics, of this whole race baiting. And this is not a race case. Yes, Trayvon Martin was black. All right, so what? He was black. The man who shot him, well, he was half white and he was half Hispanic. If he was all Hispanic, would it be about race? I don't know. If Trayvon Martin were white or if he were Hispanic, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't make a difference what race Trayvon was or what race George was. The question was this a shooting in self-defense? That's all that's in matter. But because of this ridiculous federal hate crime, a lot of it hinges on whether or not George Zimmerman was a racist. Now, I mean, he probably wasn't. But if he was, I mean, what difference does it make? I mean, even if he was a racist, he's still allowed to shoot somebody in self-defense. It doesn't matter if he's a racist. And if he's not a racist, that doesn't mean he's allowed to murder somebody. Just because you're not a racist. But the whole idea of whether or not it's a racist and did he mumble a racial slur under his breath, somehow that would elevate this to a federal crime. It does not. It doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter what is in his mind, whether George shot Trayvon because he was black or because he didn't like the way he was dressed or because he was just in the mood for shooting somebody and shot him. As far as I'm concerned, it doesn't matter what motivated him. The fact is, you can't kill somebody. I don't care. You know, if someone is going to beat the hell out of me and they're doing it because I'm Jewish, it doesn't change it for me. I mean, what if someone beats the crap out of me to take my money? I mean, it's not going to bother me less if I found out that the guy who beat the crap out of me and took my money, likes Jews. Is that supposed to be? Oh, as long as he wasn't anti-Semite, it doesn't matter that he stole my money and beat me near an inch of my life. No, and it doesn't make it worse if I found out that he was an anti-Semite. The whole thing is ridiculous. But I think the biggest shame on this is the way the media has spun this thing to portray. I mean, they've already convicted George Zimmerman of just going out and shooting Trayvon, a poor little baby-faced boy, simply because Trayvon was walking around black and George decided to gun him down. Well, as the facts come out, you can see that is not what happened. I mean, first of all, look at the pictures of Trayvon Martin that are circulated. Go on television, go over the internet, look at the pictures. The pictures that they're circulating, I think, are Trayvon when he was like 12 years old, 13 tops. There's no way the boy in that picture is any more than 13 years old. Trayvon Martin was 17 when he was killed. Why don't they put a picture of Trayvon the way he looks now? Why'd they get a picture of him when he's 12 years old? I mean, they might as well put up a baby picture, show him in a diaper with a little rattle as if George Zimmerman is a baby killer. They're using a modern picture of George Zimmerman. Why don't they get one of George Zimmerman's boyhood pictures? Why don't they get his Cub Scout picture and put it up there, or something like that? What about his communion? How about showing him all dressed up for that? No, they take a recent picture of George Zimmerman and put it up next to, a childhood picture of Trayvon Martin. Trayvon Martin was 6'3". 6'3". This is not a little kid. Yes, he was 150 pounds, but 150 pounds of muscle. Take a look at some of the pictures of Trayvon Martin from his MySpace page. He was a muscular kid. I mean, take a look at his arm. It's covered in tattoos. The guy was all tatted up. And in fact, the smiling boy in the childhood picture, he doesn't have that white smile anymore because all his teeth are gold. Now, I don't know if that's just gold jewelry he's got on his teeth or he actually has gold fillings, but he's got all these gold teeth. He's got all these tattoos. He's 150 pounds of muscle, and he's 17 years old. He's not a little baby-faced boy. Now, George Zimmerman, yes, he's 30 years old, but he's 5'9". He's a short guy. Now, they're talking about the fact that, well, he was 200 pounds. Yeah, 200 pounds of fat. 150 pounds of muscle versus 200 pounds of fat. This guy, George Zimmerman, is not a big bodybuilder. All right. And so the media is already trying to frame this as this big, heavy guy beats up on this little kid, which clearly is not what happened. Meanwhile, Trayvon Martin, and not that I feel very badly that Trayvon is dead. All right? I think whenever a kid dies, 17-year-old boy, it's a tragedy. All right. But let's face facts. Right. He had been suspended from school. He had been a 10-day suspension from school, potentially because he had marijuana. This is not a choir boy. Right? He's a kid. He's got some problems. He's not, he's a football player on suspension from school. I'm going to go back. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the truth about the Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman saga, and take your calls. If anyone else has a different spin on it, give me a call. We can talk about this. I know it's a big topic on a lot of talk shows. We will be right back. Prior to the break, I'm talking about this Trayvon Martin or a saga here that's going to unfold on Capitol Hill as his parents are going to be testifying. By the way, last week, Trayvon's mother went down and filed to copyright the slogans I am Trayvon and justice for Trayvon. Apparently, they're planning on coming out with all sorts of merchandise that have those logos on them, and they want to make sure that they get all the money and that no one else is able to make T-shirts or CDs or hoodies. I guess they're going to come out with their own line now of Trayvon Williams hoodies because he happened to be wearing a hoodie on that fateful night, which is one of the reasons that he looked suspicious to Zimmerman, who was captain of the watch patrol that was out there. By the way, I might have misspoken on his age. He apparently George Zimmerman rather was 28 years old. But anyway, this is what actually happened. And of course, one more thing. Everyone's talking about racism. You know what's racist? It's the black community for coming out and asking for George Zimmerman's head. They basically tried and convicted him because he killed a black man. I mean, just because the victim is black doesn't mean that the person who shot him is guilty and that the black victim was an innocent bystander. I mean, every time a white person is shot, it's not like you have a bunch of people in the street saying, aha, he was shot because he was white. Let's hear the facts. Let's reserve judgment until the facts are out. But no, you have people like Spike Lee rushing to this guy's defense. Spike doesn't know the facts. What does he know? All he knows is that Trayvon is black. But that's all it takes for a racist like Spike Lee, because, if a black person is dead, he must be an innocent victim of racism, right? I mean, let's get the facts. Maybe this is the case. Maybe George Zimmerman did shoot him in cold blood simply because he was black, okay? And if he did that, see, that's real bad. And it's not just because he was black, just because he killed him. But let's get the facts. Because obviously the police didn't arrest him at the time. There must have been a rational explanation for the police to let the guy go. After all, police don't like to just let murderers off the hook. That's not why they're there. So, let's give a little bit of the benefit of the doubt to the officers who were on the scenes and say, hey, maybe there was actually something that to them looked like Zimmerman was telling the truth. Otherwise, they wouldn't have let him go. But anyway, here's what happened. So George Zimmerman is on patrol, and he notices somebody walking around his neighborhood that he doesn't recognize, right? He's a tall guy walking around in a hoodie, young man in a hoodie. And he's not even sure if he's black initially, because if you look at if you listen to the 911 tapes, the 911 operator asks him a question. He says, is the guy white, black, or Hispanic? And Zimmerman says, well, I'm not sure. I think he's black. So he's not even sure. So to say that the whole thing was racially motivated when he wasn't even sure what race the guy was. He just said he was acting suspiciously. It was raining. He was running around. He was in a hoodie. I don't recognize him. I want to go check it out, which is natural. Apparently, there had been a wave of robberies in this neighborhood. So George is there. He's on the watch, trying to keep an eye out for suspicious-looking people. Here's a guy he's never seen, tall guy, young guy, in a hoodie. Okay, let me go just ask him, hey, what's going on? What are you doing in the neighborhood? Logical thing to do. And apparently, Trayvon Martin was maybe offended by the fact that George Zimmerman was asking him why he was walking around. And apparently, according to Zimmerman, this led to a confrontation that actually Trayvon Martin attacked George Zimmerman. According to Zimmerman, Trayvon came out and decked him, punched him in the nose, knocked him down, and when he fell to the ground, he jumped on top of him and continued to beat him and bang his head against the concrete. And that is when George, fearing for his life, shot Trayvon with a gun that he was legally allowed to carry. And when the police came, his story looked right. I mean, the guy had a broken nose. He was bleeding from his nose. He had lacerations. He was bleeding from the back of his head. The back of his clothes was stained from the grass where he was lying on his back. So Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman is lying on his back in this prone position, and he's shooting upwards at Trayvon Martin, who is on top of him, beating him. And apparently there were witnesses who backed up Zimmerman's story. And so that's why the police didn't arrest him. And look, are the witnesses lying? Is Zimmerman lying? Maybe he is. But you know what? Let's not try him and convict him when right now the circumstantial evidence looks like it was Trayvon Martin's fault. Trayvon Martin overreacted. Yeah, did he have no? Was he offended? Did he maybe believe that George Zimmerman simply stopped him or thought he looked suspicious because he was black? Maybe, and maybe he did. But Trayvon has to be man enough to understand. Hey, I'm walking around. I'm young. I'm a black male in a hoodie walking around in a community. I could look suspicious. Look, I remember when I first moved to Beverly Hills. We moved from New York to Beverly Hills. Now I remember one day, I was running around the neighborhood. I don't even remember why I was running, but I was in street clothes and I was running. And a police car pulled up to me, stopped me, and questioned me. Who are you? What are you doing here? Where are you going? Now, if I happen to be black, I might have said, well, the policeman is pulling me over because I'm black. That's not why they pulled me over. I was new to the neighborhood. They didn't recognize me. I was a young man and I was running. That made me look suspicious. I understood their concern, and I simply explained to the policeman who I was, where I lived. I showed him my ID, and they let me go. Now, if I was a black guy, could I have been offended? Could I have been mad? But I think if I was a young black man and I was being stopped by the police because they thought I was suspicious by virtue of the fact that I was young and black, I wouldn't blame the police for being racist. I would blame all the other young black men who gave me such a bad image because, unfortunately, a lot of crimes are committed by young black men, particularly black men who are dressed certain ways. Maybe wearing a hoodie makes you look a little bit more suspicious. So if I want to dress gangsta and, am I supposed to be shocked that people treat me that way? If I want to have, the gold teeth and if I want to have all the tattoos. In fact, you know what Trayvon Martin's handle was on Twitter, right? He tweeted under the name No Limit NIGGA. No Limit NIGGA. That's what he called himself. And you can look at a lot of his tweets that are on the internet, right? this guy wasn't spending his days catching butterflies in the net. He was he was a tough kid. He was, I can see him being a hothead. I can see him getting upset. And of course, he had just been suspended that day from school. He had a 10-day suspension. He might have been in a bad mood, right? It's rain, and this guy comes up to him and he takes offense. He decides he's going to go gangster on him and he whacks him. According to Trayvon Martin, according to George Zimmerman, he lost Trayvon. He was trying to follow him because he was trying to keep an eye on him. He probably didn't want a confrontation. Why would he? The guy's only 5'9" and he's out of shape. Why would he want to confront the guy 6'3"? But apparently he lost sight of him, and then Trayvon came up to him and asked George Zimmerman, "Do you have a problem with me?" And then George, according to George Zimmerman, George said no. And then Trayvon replied, "Well, you got a problem with me now." And that's when he punched him and he jumped on him. Now, do I think Trayvon Martin was going to kill him? Probably not. But George Zimmerman, I mean, he might not have known that. Apparently, George was screaming for help. Nobody was helping him. Did he legitimately fear for his life? Now, maybe. I'm not sure. Some of the accounts, did Trayvon go for Zimmerman's gun? When he pushed him to the ground and jumped on him and started punching him, maybe Trayvon saw that there was a gun there. And maybe he went to try to take that gun. Was he going to use it on him? No one knows. Maybe he just wanted to get rid of the gun so he can keep punching him so that Trayvon wouldn't shoot him. But, I mean, in that circumstance, you don't know. I mean, could it be that George Zimmerman was in fear for his life and he shot him because he thought if he didn't do it, that this kid was going to beat him to death? Quite possibly. But you know what? Trayvon Martin put himself in that circumstance. He didn't have to start that fight. He could have just simply answered the questions or ignored him and kept on walking, and he'd still be alive today. And you can't simply say it's racism. Anyway, we're going to be back. It's an interesting topic, but we got to go. We're coming back. We're going to talk healthcare with my guest, so don't go away.